Don't you remember what George Bush had said shortly before invading Afghanistan? He also had wanted to teach a lesson to the hosts of Al-Qaeda. That was the Taliban. Hello friends, this is Imtiaz Gul YouTube official. Today we will discuss geopolitics in the light of the latest deadly, heinous attack at the Kabul airport, which left nearly 13 American servicemen as well as over 90 local Afghans dead. A lot of questions into the motives of this deadly string of attack. Who did it and why? The ISIS claimed responsibility. The American intelligence say they had been already warning about it. They somehow had an inkling about it. So the question is, what were the indications? Why then the American security establishment that is present at the Kabul airport couldn't prevent it? So is it a security lapse on the part of the American forces, or why couldn't a precaution be taken before the attackers, the suicide bombers, struck? The response by the American President Joe Biden has been very unequivocal, very blatant, in which he has said, we will not forgive, we will not forget, we will hunt you down to pay for it. That sounds very good, and reprisal, retribution is called for in a heinous attack that takes over 100 lives within a few minutes. But should we trust the American president? He also said he does not trust the Taliban right now. Taliban who arrived in Kabul on August the 15th and have basically assimilated a lot of rivals as part of their peace offensive. Their deal with the Panjshiri militants, with the son of former militant leader Ahmad Shah Massoud, are also near complete. So as a whole, the Taliban have no enemies anymore in the country. All rival factions have in fact joined them in this huge diplomatic peace offensive. But the American president says he doesn't trust them. So the world asks, should the Taliban trust the American president? And should the world at large also trust the American president or his administration? Why? This is emphatic why, because a former CIA operative, a former station officer at Afghanistan's mission, as well as in Pakistan and several other places, has spilled sort of beans on successive American administrations. Milton Bearden has told a fascinating story to the audience of a webinar organized by the Center for National Interest recently. In that webinar, Milton Bearden recalls that he conveyed to the Sudanese president and their spiritual leader, Umar Tarabi, to expel Osama bin Laden from Sudan after he had been expelled from Saudi Arabia. So the CIA didn't want Osama bin Laden in Sudan, and that was 1996. So the Sudanese came back with a reply, should we send him to Somalia? And Milton Bearden says, I said no, send him to another place. The Sudanese said, why don't you take charge of him? And Bearden told them, well, America doesn't have any direct charges against Osama bin Laden, so we can't lay our hands on him. The Sudanese then asked, can we send him to Afghanistan? And then the CIA operative says, yes, we have no problem with that if you send him to Afghanistan. So that's how Osama bin Laden was thrown out of Sudan, landed in Afghanistan in 1996, and in 1998 August we saw those attacks on the American missions in Tanzania in Kenya, and it killed few people. And as reprisal, Tomahawk missiles flew into Afghanistan over Pakistan to eliminate terrorist camps, as the CIA reported at that time, terrorist camps being run by Osama bin Laden and his organization Al-Qaeda. Milton Baden made another startling revelation, that shortly before the American troops were to invade Afghanistan in October 2001, in the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the Taliban foreign minister Mullah Abdul Wakil Mutawakkil called him and said, Osama bin Laden is not in our custody or protection anymore, suggesting the Americans could come and get him out of Afghanistan. So it excited Milton Baden. He reported this to his top bosses in Washington. And then he told the audience at the webinar of the Center for National Interest, the mood in Washington was different. They were already preparing for the war on terror through Afghanistan. And the considerations, possibly, the motives possibly went beyond Afghanistan. He says perhaps they were preparing for the invasion of Iraq in a couple of years down the lane. So Milton Baden also said that the motives were never to get Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. What were the motives? Was Pakistan the target? Was Pakistan's nuclear program the target? We don't know. It's all subject to speculation, but after what Milton Baden has said, has raised many questions, is quite exciting as well as intriguing as to how successive American administrations have been telling the world, cheating or lying to the world. Don't you remember what George Bush had said shortly before invading Afghanistan? He also had wanted to teach a lesson to the hosts of Al-Qaeda. That was the Taliban. But ironically, the same American president, the same American government, ended up signing a peace deal in February 2020 with the former hosts of Al-Qaeda, that is the Taliban, who are right now in Kabul. So imagine what has happened all these 20 years, the 2 decades, strewn with a lot of propaganda, fake news, targeting Pakistan, targeting Iran, vilifying smaller countries like Pakistan, dumping the blame of their own failures at the doorstep of Iran, Pakistan, holding them responsible for terrorist attacks elsewhere. So this has been a litany of lies, litany of fabrications. This is what it seems if you were to believe what the former CIA operative Milton Baden says. Now, what is the deduction? What is the conclusion that we can draw from here? I think the only conclusion is that geopolitics is dirty, is selfish. The United States and its allies in the NATO alliance, they have been using the phrases counterterrorism, national interest, to justify their intervention, their interference in other regions. But have those interventions helped really the stated objectives, that is counterterrorism, elimination of terror sanctuaries? If you look at Afghanistan, they never achieved their objectives. On the contrary, they had to leave the country after signing peace deals with the same people they had been accusing of being terrorists and of being hosts to terrorists. That's so much for geopolitics in this world.